The cause of death was listed as undetermined. The medical examiner disagreed, noting that compression lesions were present on the neck of the deceased, indicating a conclusive case of mechanical asphyxia. Upon further examination at the autopsy suite, the forensic pathologist observed significant petechial hemorrhages in the conjunctiva and congestion of the brain's venous sinuses, confirming the presence of ligature marks consistent with strangulation. The cause of death was listed as undetermined. The medical examiner disagreed, noting that compression lesions were present on the neck of the deceased, indicating a conclusive case of mechanical asphyxia. However, no physical evidence was collected at the scene. That absence itself became evidence, highlighting critical lapses in the initial crime investigation. The medical examiner meticulously documented every mark on the neck, each one contributing to a narrative of violent restraint and eventual loss of consciousness due to severe oxygen deprivation. The forensic pathology report would later serve as crucial documentation for the legal proceedings, detailing the precise mechanisms leading to the deceased's demise. Chapter: Case Background. The incident under investigation occurred on March 15th at a residential property in downtown Springfield. At approximately 9:30 a.m., a neighbor reported unusual activity to local law enforcement after observing an unresponsive individual through the deceased's front window. Upon arrival, officers noted that the entryway displayed signs of forced intrusion and identified the occupant as the deceased, lying motionless on the floor with visible neck markings indicative of potential strangulation. Initial responders assumed the situation was a case of natural death due to pre-existing medical conditions, given the isolated location and lack of immediate bystanders. However, upon closer inspection by emergency medical technicians, it became apparent that the deceased exhibited signs of trauma inconsistent with a peaceful demise. The presence of significant neck ligature marks prompted an immediate escalation to a homicide investigation, necessitating a thorough forensic examination of the scene and post-mortem analysis. Chapter: Initial findings. Upon arrival at the residence, first responders noted the body of the deceased lying supine on a bedroom floor, positioned near a wooden bed frame. The scene was cordoned off to preserve evidence and prevent contamination. Visible on the neck were ligature marks consistent with a thin rope or string, causing slight indentation without visible abrasions or lacerations indicative of suicidal intent. Initial medical assessment by emergency services documented diminished skin tone in the extremities and cyanosis around the lips. The deceased was unresponsive to stimuli. Emergency protocols for potential strangulation were initiated, but vital signs did not warrant resuscitation efforts due to clear signs of death. The presence of neck ligature marks prompted a classification of manner of death as undetermined pending further investigation by law enforcement and forensic examination. Absence of defensive wounds suggested a possible struggle or sudden onset of the mechanism causing death. This observation, coupled with the positioning of the body near a potential hanging device, triggered an immediate forensic response to collect evidence for a comprehensive autopsy. Chapter: Forensic Investigation. At the examination site, investigators meticulously documented the presence of a ligature consistent with nylon rope bearing abrasions and petechial marks on the deceased's neck indicative of strangulation. Swabs were collected for DNA analysis from beneath fingernails, revealing skin cells not corresponding to the victim's profile. Impressions under the victim's right hand suggested an attempt at self-defense. Chain of custody protocols were rigorously followed, ensuring all items recovered remained uncontaminated and traceable throughout processing. Notably absent was any evidence of forced entry or signs of a struggle elsewhere in the residence, suggesting the deceased knew their assailant. Unexpectedly, no defensive wounds were present on other parts of the body, further supporting the theory that resistance occurred primarily around the neck area. Upon examination of the deceased's neck region, a comprehensive suite of laboratory analyses was conducted to elucidate the mechanism and cause of death. Macroscopic inspection revealed ligature marks with notable ecchymoses and petechiae indicative of mechanical asphyxia. Microscopic analysis confirmed subcutaneous hemorrhages consistent with external force application. Histological sections were stained for myoglobinuria, which was positive at a concentration of 150 ng/ml, indicating rhabdomyolysis secondary to compression-induced ischemia. Tissue samples from the neck and upper chest were subjected to spectroscopic analysis to detect the presence of ligature material residue. The detection threshold for foreign substances was set at 0. 1 micrograms per gram tissue, with positive results found in epidermal layers, confirming the use of a nylon cord as the ligature. Microscopic examination also revealed evidence of linear abrasions and subdermal hemorrhaging patterns consistent with strangulation. Forensic examination revealed ligature marks consistent with a cord or rope around the neck of the deceased, indicative of manual strangulation. The presence of petechiae and hemorrhagic pooling in the conjunctival vessels confirmed compression-induced vascular disruption, typical of this mechanism of injury. Microscopic analysis of subcutaneous tissue showed evidence of acute hypoxia leading to cellular necrosis. Radiological imaging identified rib fractures consistent with violent manual pressure, corroborating the sequence of events as proposed by forensic pathologists. The postmortem interval was estimated using entomological evidence and decomposition patterns, placing the time of death at approximately 24 hours prior to discovery. This timeline confirmed the initial hypothesis that strangulation occurred within a domestic setting, contradicting earlier suggestions of suicide or accidental hanging. The presence of distinct ligature marks on the neck of the deceased indicates an external force applied to restrict blood flow and air passage, consistent with a strangulation mechanism. Notably, compression lesions observed in conjunction suggest prolonged pressure application, indicative of both arterial and venous occlusion. These findings are critical for establishing the cause and manner of death as homicide by manual or ligature strangulation. The pattern and distribution of injuries provide evidence of an assault that led to fatal consequences. However, some aspects may require interpretation based on the positioning and nature of the applied force during the incident. Under oath, the expert would affirm the forensic findings support a conclusive determination of strangulation as the cause of death, while acknowledging limitations in reconstructing specific actions or identifying the exact implement used without additional contextual evidence. However, some aspects may require interpretation based on the positioning and nature of the applied force during the incident. Chapter Resolution: The investigation into the cause of death for the deceased concluded with a definitive determination of asphyxiation due to ligature strangulation. This conclusion was supported by the presence of characteristic compression lesions on the neck, indicative of external force application consistent with manual or ligature pressure. Upon initial examination, there were concerns regarding the possibility of positional asphyxia. However, the detailed forensic autopsy revealed distinct hemorrhagic changes and ecchymosis patterns that are specific to strangulation. These findings were further corroborated by histopathological analysis, which identified subcutaneous petechial hemorrhages and peripherally located retinal hemorrhages. The central finding was established through a comprehensive review of all medical records, photographs, and expert opinions from specialists in forensic pathology. This evidence collectively pointed towards the presence of significant mechanical force applied to the neck region, leading to vascular compromise and ultimately death. From the initial assessment, which suggested natural causes or accidental circumstances, the case pivoted towards homicide after the discovery of ligature marks and microscopic hemorrhagic patterns indicative of external compression. The final determination provides closure by clearly delineating the cause as non-natural, thereby informing next steps in criminal investigation and legal proceedings. This case underscores the critical importance of meticulous documentation and analysis of ligature marks in cases of suspected strangulation. Compression lesions provide key evidence for determining both mechanism and causality. Proper forensic photography, precise measurement, and thorough histopathological examination are essential. The file remains open,